One. What is going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Masculine Health Solutions podcast, where I'm joined by the legendary David Hernandez, who's going to break down a lot of good things in regards to weight loss and a lot of basically what I kind of view as a different perspective on how we should be approaching weight loss, fitness, health, mindset, and all those good things that I think a lot of us, have these odd, well, not odd, I'd say that we've been influenced too much by extrinsic forces, but Dave's going to kind of put that into focus. But first and foremost, David, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing fantastic, CJ. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm honored to be a part of the show. Thanks for having
Hey,
me.
man, I'm happy you're here because there's a lot we're gonna jump into. And I was reading your bio and that, but what got you started in all of this? What got you started down this road?
Young age, I was into sports, always liked fitness. I was introduced to a bodybuilder magazine that absolutely revolutionized my mind. I couldn't believe that a body could get that big, especially being so skinny myself. And after reading about a lot of these athletes, like I realized that they came from a very similar background. So
Mhm.
from a very young age, I just really immersed myself into that culture. And I had a childhood best friend who was a total opposite. So to paint you a picture, I was this young, skinny, athletic kid, and he was this husky, slightly overweight, non-athletic, uncoordinated guy. And
Yeah.
so he was like a brother to me, man. We did everything together. We played football together. We tried every sport together, hung out so much all the time. And I did my best trying to help him with his journey because I saw that he was suffering. And a lot of
Yeah.
times when we're in an unsettling place in life, whether we're not happy with the way we look, we're not happy with the life that we're living, a lot of times we suffer, but we suffer in silence. And that was the exact thing that my best friend was going through. So in that, I would take him to the gym. Let's go for walks. Let's go for runs. This, and that. And after we split up after high school, we went our separate ways. I moved to Miami. He stayed in Texas. We kind of had a slight separation. We weren't talking as often. And, at
Yeah.
that age, he was already really battling psychologically with just not loving himself and not accepting himself because he was overweight. And 3 years after that, I got a phone call that he had passed away. He had
Jeez.
gotten so desperate to get the weight off because he had gotten so obese that he went to get a gastric bypass surgery. 2 days later, he
Uh,
got an infection and he died.
damn.
And that news was the biggest slap in the face, um, because I started to blame myself. I
Yeah.
started to blame myself, believing that I could have done more. And I started asking myself questions. Why didn't I do that? What if I had done this? Why didn't I stick with him? And so, about after 8 months of beating myself up, I had to realize that there was not much more I could have done. I did my best with what I knew, that it really had to come down to him.
Yeah.
And I quickly realized that there were some greater issues happening that was keeping him stuck in that life, right? And in that was really the identity piece. And so I did make a commitment, though. I knew I couldn't do anything else for him, but I made a commitment. I said, as long as I know of somebody or if I can influence somebody, I want to make sure that they avoid going through what my best friend went through. And we fast forward 16 years now, and I'm still holding myself to that promise.
No, but I mean, the way I kind of see it, that's your origin story for a lot of us. There's usually pain involved, you know?
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
I kind of feel like, you know what, sometimes the greatest humans or some of the greatest work comes from a very, very painful place.
Hmm.
And I mean, I can totally relate to that because it's kind of like, yo, we all get spurred into fitness for different things. But
Yeah,
I kind of find that, hey, it might seem negative at the onset, but what you create afterwards can be beautiful, right? So, hey, man,
absolutely.
props out to you for
Perspective,
that.
brother. That
Yeah,
darkest moment became my purpose. I was able to find it. But had I not seen it through that lens, through a
yeah.
different perspective, right? Of, well, okay, well, what can I learn from this? What can I gain from this? Am I going to continue to just be the victim and beat myself up for something that I can't control any longer because it's in the past? Or can I look forward and say this situation can now help for good? And that's exactly what it's become for me.
100%, man. But so now let's say this happens, and what was the first thing that when did you make that connection between okay, obesity and there's something related to the mind, like psychologically. It's like how are these people viewing things? Like when did you make that connection? Because that's a very 16 years ago that wasn't really talked about.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't. And still today, it's not fully talked about enough. And
Hmm.
I think that we are doing people a disservice from not driving this message and speaking it loud enough. And I understand the reasons why it's not done, right?
Yeah,
Financial gains and so many other different political
yeah.
reasons. But the core of it was I came back to, well, why wasn't he able to? It's not that he didn't want to, right? It's not a will or a desire that is keeping us from attaining the life or releasing weight or achieving the physical fitness goals that we want, because we all want it.
Yeah,
So I would ask myself, why is that? And it really comes down to his makeup, right? His environment, how he was raised, how his identity was formed. And
mhm,
in that, a big component was his relationship with food. This is a conversation that I believe is missing in the health space.
yeah,
When we look at relationship, every single day we're in relationship with everything around us.
yeah.
We're in relationship with our parents, we're in relationship with colleagues, we're in relationship with our boss, we're in relationship with our pets. Like we relationship meaning we are in constant connection with them.
Hmm.
And in this same way, when we are raised, we are developing relationships that end up shaping who we become. It
Yeah.
becomes our identity. The things that we do form who we become, right?
Hmm.
So when we're looking at this, I would go back and I would say, okay, what were the things that would make him stay stuck in that place? Well, it was his belief about himself, but his belief about himself was shaped from a very young age, right? He had a very traumatic experience with his family. His mom abandoned him, his grandmother adopted him and raised him. So there's like trauma that he dealt with, but in that formation, his environment was what started to shape him, right? The
Yeah.
way he would eat was giving him an understanding of what food was for him. And when we look at food, it literally shapes who we are today. Because if we
It
look at food,
does.
what does it do for us? It influences our mood, it influences our thoughts, our energy, our performance, and literally shapes us
Yeah.
physically, right?
Yeah.
So, in that, it's understanding that from a young age, we have developed a relationship with food that, in essence, has become our identity because it's how we're now viewing this relationship that I have with food, with myself, with my environment, and even with health as a whole, which
Yeah.
is why I believe that a lot of obesity is learned behavior. We literally learn how to become this individual based on how things are presented to us from a young age.
That's super interesting. I mean, the thing is, it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense, and it's almost like when you pull back the layers, you look into a lot of people's lives. Like I don't judge these people,
Of
right?
course
Like
not.
obese
Yeah.
people, because I'm like, yo, man, like when you started looking into it, and I've heard other people talk about it too. Like I remember Tony Robbins. I remember I was listening to him way back in the day, right? And
Yeah.
he was talking about a woman that was sexually abused when she was a child, and she said, "Yeah, I just started eating, and I found
Mm-hmm.
comfort in that." And this was like 10 years ago, where I'm like, what? Like, why would
Yeah.
you start eating? That makes no sense. Right. And then she's like, yeah, I started eating. I started eating and it just gave me comfort. It gave me, I felt good. And she's like, and she's like, also with the weight that I was putting on, I was like, at least this way I'll be less approachable. I'm like, what? Like, I
Mm-hmm.
never viewed it from that perspective, but for human beings, we'll always find a way to kind of make that relationship work out to our advantage and we'll find a way to make it just kind of fit. And sometimes the brain's like, all right, we're going to do this to protect you. And
That's
it's
right.
almost like we create these false illusions in our minds, and then I mean it deteriorates our health.
Totally.
So
Totally.
it's
Because
interesting.
we're always looking for joy and happiness, right?
Yeah,
At the end of the
ultimately.
day, we want to
Yeah,
feel good, we want to be happy. And the issue is that when we're growing up, and usually this relationship is formed from a young age, and it's in our developmental years, usually from being born to about 7 years old.
Hmm.
because that's where we're observing everything. We're learning how by seeing our parents. How do they eat?
Yeah.
We're learning by how are our emotions dealt with. So I always use this example. Let's say young CJ came home from school. He got in a fight with his best friend. He's sad. They fought over a toy. He broke the toy. Your best friend did. Right now, you got in
Hmm.
this big argument. You come home, mom sees that you're sad. So she says, CJ, what happened? You guys chat. And she says, you know what, son? It's going to be okay. Here, have this cookie. You're going to be fine.
Yeah. Hmm.
Have this cookie to make you feel better. As individuals, we don't realize what's happening in that moment. When CJ now eats that cookie, subconsciously he starts to associate,
Boom.
well, if I want to feel better, this cookie is going to help.
Yeah.
In those moments, we start to connect neurological connections with that. The more that pattern starts to repeat, now it's not going to happen because mom brings it to you. Now CJ is going to be the one that's going to go grab that cookie to make me feel better. And the issue with that is that in that communication, in that dialogue, in that relationship, you start to develop an unhealthy relationship with food because food wasn't intended for the sole purpose to bring us joy or to make us
Hmm.
feel good. It
Yeah.
does do that as a byproduct. Why? Because food produces chemical reactions within our body. It spikes up our dopamine, especially if we're talking about sugar and
Yeah.
high processed foods that turn into sugar quickly, right? We get satisfactions of serotonin, we get all of these chemical reactions because that's what food does.
Yeah.
However, when that relationship is developed in an unhealthy way, it starts to quickly become toxic, which then now causes you psychologically to view food as my coping mechanism, as my
Hmm.
outlet, as my feel good drug. And because sugar doesn't fight back, it never says no. It is free. It is always available. It is very easy for us as humans to literally wrap ourselves in as that coping mechanism of choice for our life.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's so readily available, like
Absolutely,
now
dude.
too, because it's kind of like
Yeah,
versus ancestral eating, where it's like, yo, I gotta go get these berries, you know?
that's right.
We gotta go
That's right.
make these pies and we gotta work for the food that we're eating. But now it just seems like honestly, there's high fructose corn syrup and everything, there's that
Everything,
soy
man.
and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like for me, I always view it from like, okay, is this good or bad for my testosterone? And I got two
Yeah,
boys,
it's
and the more
great.
I read into it, I'm just like, wait, I don't want my
Mm-hmm.
kids to be eating a credit card's worth of microplastics this week, so we're gonna not eat this shit.
That's
But the
right.
thing is, it's kind of like, and I don't view food as the enemy, right? It's kind of like I have a healthy relationship with food. However, there's certain foods where I'm like, bro, I ain't going near that.
That's
I'm
right.
avoiding that one like the plague. But now for you, let's say you take somebody who's had that relationship with apple pies, with chocolate, and all that good stuff, and it's their coping mechanism. How do you take them out of that like frame of mind to say, okay, you know what? It's not a bad thing to eat. However, we got to regulate it a little bit better. What would that process kind of look like?
Yeah, I break it down into 4 steps because it's important for the individual to understand how they developed that relationship, right? Like, because we're always looking to understand our association with everything.
Hmm.
When we look at films, what draws us to a character? Like, why did he end up this way? How did
Yeah.
Superman become that? Right? We're always drawn to that curiosity. So, as humans, we got to take people back to the very beginning. Because
Hmm.
if I can tell you and show you that what you are doing today was learned, it's going to give you hope to understand that we can unlearn it and learn a different thing, right?
Yeah.
We can get ourselves out of it because when we're immersed in this thought process or in this identity, we believe we have a problem, that
Hmm.
there's a defect with us, that we were made different, that we have some type of issue with us that now keeps me stuck in this place. But if I can show you that you learned how to do this subconsciously and also physically, we're going to remove a barrier that is telling you you're not going to be able to do it. This is impossible. This is just who you are. That's a
Yeah.
lie. Okay.
Hmm.
So we take them back to realizing how this relationship with apple pie or with sugar or with fried food, whatever it is, was developed. And we're going to realize that it was typically stemming from some situation that you went through in your childhood where that was presented to you, or you saw others use those foods in the same way you're doing. Because all we do is we learn behavior patterns and we repeat them.
Yeah, 100%.
When we look at our culture, if we're raised in, I come from a Mexican family, right? That was my culture growing up. So what was readily available for me?
Food.
Everything that was in the Mexican culture, right?
Yeah.
But I had to make a choice from a very young age, seeing what the outcome was
Hmm.
if I'm not intentional about what is being presented to me and develop a conscious, healthy relationship with the foods around me. I can potentially end up like my uncle. I can potentially end up like my aunt, right?
Yeah.
So it's taking them back from the beginning and then having them understand that, look, we can unlearn how to do this by going through what I call the root cause. Where did it come from? Where does it stem from?
Hmm.
Right. To then looking at, well, there's always going to be things that trigger us to go to these foods.
Yeah.
So if we can recognize what those are, we're going to now start to be able to have the power to take control of our own choices, because
Yeah.
that's what's happening. You have lost control of the choices you are making, right? It's
100%.
now automatic. And why is it automatic? Because neurologically, we've developed connections that take us to those foods whenever we're feeling stressed, when we're feeling sad, when we're feeling angry, when we get bad news, whenever I just need to deal with, I have some anxiety, I got to deal with it. You're going to always go to the same foods. Why? Because we've developed those neurological connections.
Yeah.
So through this 4-step process that I've developed, it's literally helping people unwire these connections, basically destroy those connections and develop a new neurological connection with a different choice.
Interesting. And would you say it's almost like an addiction at this point? Because I understand that yes, it's kind of
Absolutely.
like okay, so it is more
Absolutely.
because it's kind of like you almost have to what's the word I'm looking for? Like detoxify them from it, right? Just almost like do like
Yeah.
a rehab type thing.
So here, let me give you a picture so you can see this. Why it's now an addiction is because when we do something, in our brain we have neurological charges that fire, right?
Hmm.
They're literally electronic charges that fire. The more we do a set thing, the
Yeah.
stronger those connections start to fire, right? And because everything is linked, those now start to develop in a strong way. So let's look at this. You're in a forest, right? In this forest, there's different trails, right? So I want you to look at your neurological connection as like a trail, like a bike
Hmm.
trail, a walking trail, right? So when you first come to this forest, that trail might be full of trees, it might have weeds, it might be non-existent. The
Yeah.
more you start to do something, what you're literally doing is you're starting to shape out this trail. You're starting
Hmm.
to map it out. It's starting to become clear. Now you can kind of see that there's a trail for you to walk through there, right? You're
Yes.
literally now making space. The more we repeat a set behavior, like for example, I'm sad, I want to feel good, I go to the cookie. The more I do that, I'm literally now in my brain starting to shape out this trail. The more that trail becomes clear, the stronger it's going to be on you and it's going to be harder to get out of. Why?
Mm.
Because now it's an automatic state, right? Now you
Yeah.
just fire automatically because the reward versus the desire. Let's say the desire to feel good and the reward is good, that starts to become a habit. That is how
Interesting.
habits are formed, right?
Hmm.
So what we have to do now is literally desert this trail and create a new trail doing something else. So that
Interesting.
might be if I'm stressed or if I'm sad, I'm no longer going to go to the cookie. Now I'm going to go for a walk instead. Now I'm going to go to the gym instead. Now I'm going to, I don't know, listen to some music, do some breath work. But
Yeah.
for us to create that new trail, it takes a little bit of time and effort, right? Because this trail is
Solid.
rooted in you. It's
Hmm.
strong. It's visible.
Yeah.
But the more we get away from this, I'm not going to go this route anymore. I'm going to go this route. This trail now starts to become bushy. Weeds start to grow on it.
Mm-hmm.
And now I can start to map out this new trail that I decide to create within this forest, meaning your brain.
100%. And I imagine that process probably takes anywhere from what, 3 months to a year for them to finally make that
It's
complete
different.
switch. Yeah.
It's different on every person, right? Because in there is like, let's go back to how habits are formed. Well, desire is what starts a habit, but
Mm-hmm.
the reward is what actually creates the habit. If the reward is strong enough for the brain to understand, oh, yeah, I want to do more of that, is we'll start to form that habit, right? So
Yeah.
it really comes down to our true desire of wanting to change who we are. Back to the identity piece, right? We do what we do because we are who we are.
Yeah.
It's that simple, right? Because of what you believe about yourself. What's that famous quote? Whether you think you're right or whether you think
Wrong. You're
you're
usually
right,
right.
right?
Yeah.
And as a man thinketh, so is he, right?
Yeah.
It comes down to our belief, because if you believe you're ugly, you're obese, you're fat, you're never going to change, well, that's going to be true for you.
Yeah.
But if we can now change our belief and say, no, I am healthy, I am strong, I am fit. Yeah, but David, my reality is the difference. It doesn't matter. It's about our belief, right? It's about changing our identity and how we
Mm-hmm.
view or see ourselves. Because as we think, we will then do. As we are, we will then do, right? And
Yeah.
so it's really getting to the identity piece being the mental piece to help people rewire and shape who they are, to change who they are, to
Mm-hmm.
then get the outcome of life that they want.
Well, to me, it's kind of like, I mean, I believe in manifestation, right? But I think that
Absolutely.
the one thing that people kind of disregard, they don't take into consideration because everybody gets hung up on the law of attraction. Like, there's more to that, though. It's not just
Totally.
like,
It doesn't exist just
yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
It's
It's not.
not magical stuff like that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think the secret kind of misled a lot of people. Like, oh, you just think about it. I'm like, no. But the thing is, when it comes to physical manifestation, first you got to see it in your mind, right? It's kind of like,
That's right.
okay, I want to get to 10% body fat. Okay, so I got to see that in my mind and I got to act as if prior to
That's right.
me already being that, right?
That's
And
right.
that's kind of where it's like, okay, if I'm going to bring this thing to fruition, I got to start working on it today. I got to start developing these habits and I got to make it happen. And to your point, it's almost like you got to retrain these people mentally to see themselves from
Absolutely.
a different perspective, right?
Yeah, totally. 100%. Because it's not so much only about the doing. We spend so much time trying to think, well, just tell me what to do. But if we don't believe what we are desiring, in the
Mm-hmm.
sense of this is who I am, the I am statement is so critical. And
Powerful.
the confession of who you now have chosen to become or to be is just as important. Why? Because as we hear, we believe,
Mm-hmm.
which is why if we continue to speak, I'm ugly, I'm fat, I'm terrible, I suck, I'm never going to achieve, I'm never going to succeed, what are you hearing?
Negativity.
Literally that.
Mm-hmm.
So everything within you is going to give you that outcome.
Yeah.
But if I can now decide I am healthy, but today your physicality is you might be overweight, you might have unhealthy habits, you don't go to the gym, whatever that is. That's your current reality, but that's temporary because we have the ability of changing anything. Why? Because one, we have to understand that our brain is plastic. We
Yep.
can literally reshape and design it however we want. So if we can change this, everything else will follow.
Yeah.
So if we can decide, I am now who I want to be. I'm healthy, I'm fit, I'm strong, I'm successful, I'm incredible, I'm beautiful, I'm the best mother, I'm the best father, I'm the best entrepreneur, whatever it is. If we can decide that is who I want to be, and each day I now confess it. Each day I now confess it. Each day I now confess it. Even when you are screwing up, I tell myself, I am successful. I am great. I am talented. I am gifted. I
Mm-hmm.
am this person. The more you hear it, you will start to believe it.
Mm-hmm.
When you believe it, Right belief produces right actions.
Mm-hmm.
The belief now is going to draw your desire to do the good that you so much want to do, which
Mm-hmm.
will then, as a consequence, give you the results that you want. It's not
100%.
backwards.
No,
People
yeah.
do it backwards. Just tell me what to do. Just tell me what to do. Just tell me what to do. It might give you temporary results. You might do it for a little bit, but that's why you keep falling off. That's why you keep failing, because the identity piece has not been first created and constructed to then draw you to the things you should be doing that will then stay forever.
100%, man. It's kind of like it's that mental compass. That's the way
Yeah.
I've always kind of seen it. Like for myself, I'm just like too many people don't understand that. Yeah, you got to put the work in, but it's almost like your mind is the precursor to everything. You know, it's the root
Yeah.
cause of it all. And I mean, I
That's
didn't even
right.
know that as a kid. It's just kind of like my desires trumped everything. Where it's like, this is what I want. I want it now because I want to make sure that nobody can ever, mess with me again. And it just
Yeah.
boom, just spurs you into the right direction. Then obviously, you go down there and you're like, yo, I feel good. I'm gonna keep doing this. I'm gonna keep working out. I'm gonna keep developing my skills, whatever the case may be. But I think a lot of kids, and to your point, like to your buddy and stuff, it's like we also make those negative subconscious, or we just kind of take on those subconscious patterns and we have no idea
Yeah.
where they're coming from, where they stem
That's
from,
right.
or what the root
That's right.
causes of that actually are. But the one thing that I did want to discuss with you, which to me doesn't make a whole lot of sense, I want to get your take on this, is what do you feel about this new body acceptance movement? And do you think it's fair? Because they're basically telling people it's okay for you to 20,000 calories. It's okay to do this. And I'm like, I don't think it's okay, man. Like I think it's steering people in the wrong direction.
Yeah, that's a very controversial one, and one that I'm sensitive to speak about because I empathize with everyone. And
Hmm.
I believe that there is beauty in all shapes. However, where I draw the line is if what I am doing is putting me at risk to affect my health,
Heart
not just
attacks.
right
Yeah.
now, but in the future, I do not condone that. Why? Because without health, it doesn't matter how beautiful or how society wants to make you paint to be sexy, to be beautiful, to love our curves. I
Hmm.
believe that we can find beauty to a certain extent in that, to a certain degree. Because if I'm putting myself at risk to produce unhealthy habits, to affect my health, to give me diabetes, to cause high blood pressure, to cause cardiovascular situations and problems, to bring fatty liver into my life, then we should not condone
Yeah.
that as a society. We should not promote that. We should not give it the value or the platform that we've been giving it as a society, because we're only doing them a disservice, because at the end, it doesn't lead them to great life.
Hmm.
We feel that life is just us living. It's about quality of life, my friends.
Yes. Yes.
It's not just about existing. We're
Hmm.
all alive, but how are you living? What is the quality of life that you have? If you can't go up the stairs, if you can't enjoy adventures, if you can't go to things without feeling out of breath, without being tired, without feeling weak, we may need to reassess what we're doing, because true
Yeah.
beauty lies first with loving ourselves, to take care of ourselves first.
Hmm.
We've got one body, we've got one health, and it's our responsibility to choose that for ourselves,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, it is us that influence everything around us, right? So, in regards to that, if it's affecting you or leading you to a path of unhealthy life, I'm not for it.
100%. Interesting. Yeah, because it's kind of like I do feel that a lot of people want to be politically correct when they answer, and they want to be like, "Well, we got to be." I'm like, we do. However, I'm like, if they're hurting themselves, I'm like,
That's
I'm gonna
right.
step in. Like, I got a
Yeah.
good buddy of mine. Like, I remember there was a time where I'm like, oh, I'm gonna power lift, right? And I just got on this perma bulk, man, and I'm just bulked for like it wasn't even a bulk. I just decided to eat like I didn't care. And I got to like 280, and I would just say, well, I'm still really strong, and I can bench 4 plates and whatever, right? And he's like, nah, bro, you're fat, dog. You're fat. You're out of shape, man. Get in shape. I'm like, man, that's kind of mean. He's like, yo, it's
Yeah.
the truth, man. Get your ass in
There
shape,
you
bro.
go.
And he's a
There
good
you go.
homie, right? Like he's a close friend. And sure enough, I'm like, all right, fine. in about 3 months' time, I was down about 60 pounds, right? And I was like, all right, I'm gonna keep getting down to where I want to be, where I'm comfortable. He's like, yeah, man, you look better, you look healthy, your skin looks good. I'm like, yeah, man, you're right. I feel a lot better too. And it's
Good.
night and day, man. It's night and
Yeah,
day. And sometimes we do need somebody to give us a reality check. But I feel like our society, our culture, yes, it's good that we're more sensitive to certain populations, but at the same time, like I feel like nobody's holding anybody accountable anymore in
that's
regards to
right.
just like, here's the reality. If you keep going down this road, you probably will get a heart attack. You're probably gonna get high
Yeah,
blood pressure and type 2 diabetes.
that's
I
right.
feel like there's still that missing.
And you know what that is? That's that's false love.
Hmm.
And we as a society have lost the ability to truly love. Me telling you something that is going to better your life, whether you agree or disagree, whether it hurts or doesn't hurt, is
Hmm.
me showing my love to you, right?
Yeah.
And it's necessary. However, the reason why we create these ideas in our head, we always try to justify the reasons we're doing to please our situation temporary, to feel good right now. Like you, I justified, oh, I can bench so much. I'm so
Yeah.
strong, right? It was your own justification as to the reasonings because you did not want to come to reality that maybe this isn't the best thing for me right now,
Hmm.
or I'm
Yeah.
just not seeing it, right? So we've got to love more, and we love more through honesty and empathy in a respectful way,
Hmm.
right? I think that it's gotten so out of line as a society that, like, yes, we have freedom of speech. However, we can choose how to speak to not offend people and still love them and be able to bring the right things for people, right?
Hmm.
To encourage people to live the right way, to encourage people to get healthy. Me telling somebody, hey, you're fat, go to the gym, is probably not the best thing to do to somebody. But if
Yeah.
I could say, hey, my man, the choices that you're making today can lead you to a life that might end up in an unhealthy state or a life
Hmm.
that you probably won't be happy with. Why don't we try this and let's do it together? Or why don't we try this option and see how that feels for you? It's a
Hmm.
totally different language, but I'm telling him basically or her the same thing,
a
right?
hundred
So
percent.
it's from coming from a place of love and understanding that as humans, we all should love and guide people to something that is going to make them love themselves first.
Yeah, and you know what? And what you said there is perfect because it's kind of like my buddy just talking smacked me right to my face. But I mean, he's like, he's my closest buddy. I've known this guy since like
And that
forever,
might
right?
be okay for you, right?
And
Because
it's
your
all
guys are
right.
boys.
Yeah, exactly. It's all out of love. Like he's just like, come on, man. Like, man, you
That's
look like
right.
shit, dog. Come on, let's get to
And
work.
that's your language between you guys. And
Yeah,
that's dope. That's great, right?
yeah. And
And
then
that's acceptable.
100%, but it's like I'm not gonna do that to like let's say if I'm training like a 40-year-old woman who God only knows what she's gone through, she probably has a whole bunch of issues. I'm not just gonna walk, man, you look like shit, bro. Let's go. Like, no, I'm not
Yeah.
gonna do that, right? And
Yeah.
it's
And
awesome that you made that separation.
and we shouldn't do the opposite either of, like, if somebody doesn't look healthy or doesn't look good, meaning they could look better, we shouldn't be hypocrites either,
Oh
right?
no, yeah,
Of
especially when
like,
you've been
oh my
there,
gosh, we
yeah.
know they're not happy with themselves. They are literally brainwashing themselves to believe that they look good with the figure, with the shape that they have. But deep down inside, they're not loving themselves. They're not
Yeah.
happy. They just have this public persona, which is literally to protect themselves from being hurt, that
Hmm.
they end up living this life. And what are we doing? We're condoning it, we're accepting it, and we're keeping them stuck and trapped in this pain and unrealistic and unhealthy reality.
Well, it's brutal too because it's like
Totally.
when you want to bring up that honesty piece, and I tell her, because like I said, I got my two boys, and I always tell them honestly when they ask me questions about XYZ, whatever they teach them in school, it's kind of like, that's cool. They can teach you whatever. They can bring up these different things. And I always tell them, think critically, because not everything they're going to tell you, like, don't ever take it as truth at face value, because you don't know what's behind it. Like,
Right.
I remember I looked up a statistic that said the Food and Drug Administration basically, I think in the United States, because I live in Canada, right? But in North America, on average, they make about 4,000 calories worth of food, right?
Mhm.
And when I got to
Mhm.
thinking, I'm like, but 4,000 cal. I wonder how many micronutrients are actually in there. You know, what's the
Yeah.
protein content? What's the macro breakdown?
Yeah.
I bet you 90% of it's high fructose corn syrup, some soy stuff, and a whole bunch
That's
of
right.
other random shit that your body doesn't need. And I kind of
Yeah.
feel like at the same time they want to push this agenda kind of on younger kids, and I'm seeing it in children, which kind of like scares me. I'm like, whoa, childhood
Yep.
obesity is another thing that's coming up, man. Like,
It's a serious thing, man. Right now, there's the highest rate of kids dealing with high blood pressure. Right. I just
dude,
did a I
yeah.
did a post not too long ago on that. And it's but here's the thing. The American standard diet is sadly keeping people in this unhealthy life.
Oh my God,
We
that
get it.
triangle.
Why? It's
Yes.
all a money thing, right? It's about literally making the highest calorie quality foods that they can with the lowest nutritional value, right? At the lowest cost.
Yeah.
It's if I can give you a lot of calories at a very low cost, sign me up. I'm in it. That's what the American standard diet believes, right? Which is
Hmm.
why we have an influx of I don't know the percentage, but a great percentage of it is all processed foods, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when we look at that, it's easy for us to say, yeah, but they're the problem. Yes, they are a contributor to the problem. However, they are not the problem because we are responsible for our own life, right?
Yes. Yes.
I could have easily said, Mexican culture, they're all fatty foods. What do you have? You have most fried foods, you have tortillas, you have everything that is
Burritos.
battered and fried and burritos
Yeah.
in big quantities, right? Like I could choose to blame that and say, well, it's because of my culture that I'm this way. Or I, like I did from a young age, realize, I don't want to end up like that. So therefore, maybe I should make a different choice in the way I'm going to eat and the way I'm going to conduct my life. It
Hmm.
comes back to my own responsibility to understand that I'm responsible for me. I'm
Yeah.
responsible for my own health. And if we take that position and take that attitude of knowing that health is your responsibility, then now we can't blame anybody else, right? It all comes down to what are we choosing for ourselves. And it's about encouraging people that health is a good thing. Health
Hmm.
is the foundation and should be the foundation that impacts and drives everything in your life because without it, we suffer.
Yeah, you're not gonna be able to like you said quality of life earlier, and I'm like, dude, yes, like I see it too often where it's like, bro, you can't go up the stairs. You know, you
That's right.
just you're having difficulty just walking. You know, like a
Yeah,
leisurely
but it's
walk.
because I hurt my back when I was 18 years old, right? We find a justification as to why
Yeah.
something's happened to not assume the responsibility to be able to change that situation.
And then just kind of, yeah, because to your point, it's always like, oh, I got this trick knee that, happened to me 20 years ago. I'm like, well, why didn't you get it looked at, dog?
Yeah, that's
It's
right.
like,
Yeah.
maybe the inflammation from the food that you're eating may be a contributing factor in how it's not getting any better.
Yeah.
And
Or it's the doctor's fault or
yeah,
it's my best friend that caused this injury on me, right? It's always and that's
deflection.
normal as humans to always point the finger out, right? But
Hmm.
when we decide to again now like Gary Vee says point the thumb at you,
Yeah.
let me assess my life. Let me analyze and reflect what am I doing that is contributing to this or keeping me stuck in this place? It's going to be a totally different perspective and will literally get you out of the condition that you're in.
No, man. And to your point, like, and I love the fact that we're talking about mindset because whatever it is in this life, it always starts with the mind, man. Like it
It
always
does.
comes back to the mind. It's like whatever you think you'll bring into like fruition, you'll bring into like life itself.
That's right.
This is the root cause of everything for a lot of us. And I love the
Yeah.
fact that you're taking this approach because for me, honestly, I just look at macros and whatever, but I already developed like certain habits around it, right? Where it's just like,
Of
okay,
course.
just let me know the macros, the micros, and I'm good to go, man. I'll figure out my diet from there. Thank you. But
Yeah.
how do you introduce that side of it where it's like, okay, we got the mindset down, these are the dietary shifts that we're going to make for somebody that's been eating in a certain way for so long. How do you get them to really start paying attention to that? Like, do you just kind of give them the macros and you're like, all right, good to go, man? You just run with the protein. But
I
how do you
used
do
to
that?
do that, but I realized that doesn't work
Hmm.
because, again, it's about having people realize that what they're doing today is giving them the outcome of life. Most people don't even realize they're doing things that are hurting them Why? Because to them, they see it as something normal. That
Yeah.
is the psychological part that is absolutely critical for us to understand. When I started talking about emotional eating or stress eating, I would say that 95% of all the people that I started speaking about this topic had no clue they were emotional eaters, had no clue they were stress eaters, because to them, they thought that was normal. To them, they've always done that.
Wow.
So psychologically, they think that's okay. That's a normal thing to do. So until we don't get somebody to understand that what they're doing, literally the choices that they're making, is leading them to the life that they have, it's going to be hard for them to follow something, because they think, well, what is this? Why should I don't like this. Why do I need to follow this macro thing? Why do I need to stop eating these foods that I've always ate? This is how I was taught to eat. Like, why shouldn't I?
Hmm.
Right? So we've got to now retrain them and have them realize that the behavior choices that they're making are leading them to that life. That's step one. Once they can see that and recognize that, now we have to then take them to make the different choice. So
Yeah.
it's about letting them realize, well, what do you think a healthy person eats?
Interesting.
What do you think a
Interesting.
healthy person chooses as a snack? What do you think a healthy person chooses to do firsting out of bed? What does a healthy person do for fun? What does a
Hmm.
healthy person choose for their life? Even in the clothes that they wear, right? In the shoes that they wear, in the things that they watch, in the things that they hear, because now they start to realize, this
Interesting.
is what they do. So now the choice comes from within versus me telling you what to do. Where we have failed as a fitness, as in the fitness industry, is to only telling people what to do.
Yeah.
That works for a certain amount of time. But if I can teach you to make the choice for yourself, because you understand that when I make that choice, it's benefiting me, but I'm choosing it,
Hmm.
it's going to hold stronger, because now it's their choice versus me telling you, stop eating that fatty burger. No,
Yeah.
no. Now I realize I don't want that fatty burger because I'm healthy. I want this instead.
Interesting. It's called like the way I see it's like you're recalibrating their brains. You
Everything,
know,
dude.
it's
We're
like
literally retraining everybody to, we're retraining them to choose a different life, right?
yeah.
But it's so much different because now it's coming from your understanding.
Hmm.
Now it's me making the conscious choice, even though I don't know what I'm doing. As long as if I can choose it and believe that this is what a healthy person does, then the more I do that behavior pattern, I'm going to reap the benefits of it. That's the truth.
And that's the healthy loop that you're basically creating because now it's that
That's right.
reward, and then it's like, oh, you know
That's
what? This
right.
actually this is magic. It's like the first time
That's
anybody kind
right.
of loses their first 20 pounds. Because I
That's
had a client
right.
like that too, and it just kind of like, yo, don't worry. As soon as you lose the 10 pounds, all of a sudden he's like, bro, I'm a god. I'm like, all
Yeah.
right, let's take it easy, but you're doing good, bro. And it's kind of you're right because it's kind of like you're basically making sure that they can make that connection, but getting them there because you work with a more specific population, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
it's I guess for you getting them to that first step is probably one of the hardest things. Or
Acceptance is the hardest thing for most people, right? Really accepting the fact that I have these issues. I
mm-hmm,
have, a food addiction, or I have a coping mechanism to deal with in terms of food, right? Or I struggle with this. Acceptance is the first place we have to get to,
interesting,
and recognize that, yes, I'm doing this to myself. Because
interesting.
once we can drop that barrier, that ego-based conscious that is
Mm-hmm.
making you believe, no, you don't do that, no, you don't have a problem, no, you don't stress eat, no, you don't emotionally, you're not addicted to sugar, I just have a carton a week, like that's not a problem. Other
Exactly.
people might do more, right? We justify our
Yeah,
actions, and that keeps us trapped. So until we don't drop down this ego-based conscious belief and attitude, we're never gonna fully find the freedom that we truly desire.
that is. I mean, it's on point because you're right. It's damn, man. Like it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense, and I guess this is how you really get the ball rolling. And like,
Yeah.
let's say you get the ball rolling, they've accepted it, they started, they're making. How do you make sure that they stay on the right path? Because just like a junkie, that's sometimes like, oh man, I'm gonna go that forget that one hit that one time, and all of a sudden they kind of derail. Does that ever happen with your clients, and how do you get them to come back to it?
Absolutely. It's really about recognizing to eliminate interferences.
Okay.
One thing that will cause us to go back to old habits is if something reminds us of the past.
Breakup.
So, which is why they tell alcoholics, stay away from anywhere where there's alcohol, stay away from making new friends, don't go to the clubs, because one reminder will cause you to go back.
Yeah.
So what do we do? How do we change that? Are we now going to live in a bubble? No. What we want to do is we want to reinforce our new identity and put reminders that speak of who you now are.
Hmm.
So one thing that I recommend is we start literally in your home, inundate yourself with reminders that speak of who you now are, right?
Yeah.
Pictures of healthy people, pictures of healthy food, pictures of like your vision board of things that you desire to do, right? And then look at what things are interferences for me that I should remove. So that might be you might need to make new friends.
Hmm.
You might start to have to take a different route to work and not go through all of those fast food restaurants, right?
Yeah.
You might have to give up hanging around coworkers or going to the same restaurants you always did. We might have to start laying out the clothes in front of you so when you see it first thing in the morning, you know this is a reinforcement, this is a new identity, this is what I do. I go to the gym, I go to work, I go work out, right? Like
Hmm.
it's about putting reminders that reinforce your new identity. And the more we can do that, we are literally now shutting down this old you that will want to manifest. And the more we do that with time, it's not even going to be a
Seamless.
desire for you anymore because you've
Hmm.
become now this person so much. You've tasted so much good. You've experienced this new person and have just lived so much amazing life that you don't want to go back. You don't desire that anymore. So with time, you'll never go back.
Interesting. It's almost like you're creating a new avatar, is the way I see it too.
Everything, dude.
You
You're
know, like,
literally reshaping everything about you. You are creating a new identity.
yeah, dude. And it's interesting because I did have a guy on Purdeep Sang and he was talking about identity and how our identity is basically going to predict whether you are successful or not, depending on
Yeah,
how that person has created this identity through their life experiences and then what they reinforce to themselves every single day through their
that's
actions,
right.
their words, their affirmations. And it's
That's
interesting
right.
because now I see it from the health perspective of somebody that's doing it negatively and how you basically bring that process and say, okay, now we're gonna make yourself a new identity, bro. Like we're gonna let go of that one. That one's gonna die. It's almost like, when some what is it, like a lizard sheds his skin, right? It's like, okay, we're
Yeah,
done with that. Like we're done
that's
with
it.
that. This is
But
the
we
new
have
path.
to make the definitive choice for that first, right?
Hmm.
That's why I sound like a broken record, but we have to be determined and committed to it no matter what. That is
Hmm.
why when people say, all right, I'm going to try that, you failed.
No, yeah, no,
Don't try it. Oh,
that's weak.
let me see if it works. It's not going to work. Don't do
No,
it. Right. Which is why things that we can utilize to help us are affirmations in the context of being able to reaffirm who you are. Right.
yeah,
Being able to reaffirm constantly who you are, because again, it's about hearing. The more I can hear, the more I can hear, the more I believe, the more then I will do set thing I am believing,
yeah, a hundred
right?
percent, man. The other thing I was gonna ask before we leave, because I'm like, well, man, this time has gone by way too fast. But the last thing I kind of wanted to go over was, let's say you've gotten somebody on the right path, you've worked with them, they've lost X amount of pounds, and now it's kind of like, do you recreate that healthy relationship with said fatty foods? Like, let's say they like fried foods, and it's kind of like teaching them how to incorporate it into their lifestyles, but not in a way that's ever going to derail them again. How do you approach the approach to food? I guess is what I'm
Yeah,
looking for, like the healthy approach to food, because obviously, you know what, it's always going to be around us. And
of
shoot, man,
course.
I love fried chicken. I could eat fried
Yeah.
chicken, pizza, all that good stuff that's not necessarily good for me, but I know how to do it in a way that doesn't derail me from the goals that I have. How do you do that with your clients to make sure that they can still enjoy, you know, a burger every now and again?
It all comes back to belief. What are you believing about that food, right? Let's go back to, I meant to say this earlier, but let's say you're going for a walk, but you're believing when you walk, this isn't doing anything for me. This
Mm-hmm.
sucks. I'm getting nothing out of this. Why am I even doing it? This is a waste of time. Exactly. That's exactly what it's going to produce for you. But if
Mm-hmm.
I go with the belief of saying this walk is going to make my health better, it's going to shed the weight that I want. I'm going to release all the weight. I'm going to get healthy. I'm going to get fit. I'm going to get strong. What does that do? Now that belief is going to literally align your cells. I'm speaking that and I get goosebumps just by
Mm-hmm.
speaking that, because now I'm speaking life. And when I speak life, I now start to get that outcome. When we're now reintroducing certain foods, we have to understand that the belief that if I believe that this burger I'm going to eat is going to make me fat, is going to keep me from gaining weight, that's exactly what it's going to do. So
Gotcha.
as I now develop this healthy relationship with food, I'm now eating cleaner, I'm eating healthier, less processed foods, less sugar. I'm developing set, if I believe in macros or within a calorie count, whatever that is for you. If you like that burger, know that I'm making the choice to eat that, but this choice that I'm making, it's not going to affect my health. I'm not going to gain weight by eating this burger. I'm not going to now go back to the old self simply by eating this burger or eating this pizza, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
eating this fried chicken. Because when I have a healthy relationship, I decide how much of it I eat. I decide how often I eat. I decide what it's going to do to me
Interesting. Yeah.
based on how I'm believing what this food is going to do for me. Because literally, I've had people that are eating clean, but they are believing that this is not going to give them results and they never see results. But you're saying, but they're eating healthy. So what? Their
So that
body is rejecting everything that you are giving it simply because you are believing that that's not going to give you results. And that'll be your truth.
wow. It's the power of the
Try
mind,
this
man.
exercise, dude. Seriously, I invite everybody to try this exercise. Go for a walk and tell yourself this walking sucks. This is going to do nothing for me. I'm not going to get anything. This is making me unhealthy. Do that and see what that does. See how you feel.
Mm-hmm.
And then stop, shake it off, and then now speak and say, this is making me healthy. This is making me strong. This is making me fit, and see what that does to your body. Our body is so incredible that it literally will do and believe whatever you are believing and speaking to it.
Interesting. 75 trillion cells are gonna follow the lead of the
That's it,
mind.
brother.
You know, like
That's it. And they've done studies with like plants and animals and things like that, right? Where they speak life to one and speak death to the other. And that's exactly what happens to them. And we're no different to that,
100%, dude. It's
which
kind
is
of
why I say weight release and not weight loss.
what exactly. And why was that again? Why would you call it weight
Psychologically,
release?
when we say weight loss, anything that we lose, what do we want to do as a human?
Want to get that back.
Go and find it. If you lose your keys, what are you doing? I want to go find it, right? So, subconsciously, psychologically, when we say weight loss, there is a thing inside of you that doesn't want to lose it because you know you're going to have to go chase after it. So it stops you from taking action. It brings fear, doubt, and literally just blocks us psychologically because we end up finding it again. But if we
Mhm.
say weight release, if I'm releasing something, it's my choice. If I release this out of my hand, it's my choice to let it go.
Yeah.
So subconsciously and psychologically, it has more effect to the positive versus the negative.
And it's kind of like a lot of people going back to the identity side of things. It's like, yo, man, I'm big. I'm Big J. I'm Big Craig. I'm big whatever, right? And
Yeah,
it's almost like, yo, man, I got to release that too, right? Because that's part of the identity thing where it's like, no,
that's right.
I'm not that. In order for me to like lose this weight, I don't want to be Big J anymore. I just want to be
That's
J.
right.
You know?
That's right, dude. Absolutely. And shoot, that's a big one in Hispanic culture. At least I can just speak on my side of the culture, the Mexican. What do we do when young kids are a little bit overweight? We
Hey,
call them
gordo.
gordo.
Yeah.
We call them fat, dude. We're literally telling his
uh,
identity and his whole body and life that he's fat.
yeah.
And what
No,
happens?
100%.
They end up growing fat.
Yeah, dude. It's kind of like
They
because
believe it.
I'm Costa Rican. It's the same way. Like our nicknames are brutal, right? Like I'm like, bro,
It's
you can't call
crazy, dude.
somebody Owl Eyes. Like I'm
Yeah.
like, some of the names are just mean, right? It's kind of like when I showed
We
up in
would
Costa
never say
Rica.
those in English, bro, but we
No,
like get
dude.
away with it in Spanish. So
They're the
bad, dude.
most politically like I got to Costa Rica and they're like, hey, gorilla, gorilla. I'm like, really? Gorilla? I'm like, I'll have to roll with that, like that. I didn't mind
Well,
that,
you gave it
right?
a different meaning than probably they
Yeah.
were giving it, right? So I mean, sometimes but again, it all comes back to what are we believing of what's being said, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, they were just all like, "Oh, this guy's always in the gym. You're just big, you're
Yeah,
jacked, you're a gorilla." I'm like, "All right,
that's
cool."
right.
And my own cousins and everybody. But it's true. It's kind of because a lot of people will always have that identity to them. It's like, "Hey, if you're
Yeah.
skinny, hey, flaco, come here, flaco."
That's right. And
And
that
it's
was
like,
the one that tortured my life. Like my dad used to tell me skinny, and I absolutely hated it, right? It was like the thing, even though for many it's like, but you were skinny. Yeah, but you didn't know what it was doing for me. I always had to prove myself, right? I always had
yeah,
to show that I was good, that I was athletic, that I could go toe to toe with those that were a little bit stronger, a little bit bigger than me, right?
yeah.
So that was my drive to change my identity to then become something different, right? But we all have that, but it all comes back to the identity. As we hear, we will believe.
And it's interesting too, because it's kind of like that whole belief side of things is when you're a kid, when you're most susceptible to it, when the
That's right, dude.
subconscious programming is like
Mm-hmm.
really taking place. And that's when you hear somebody calling you fat all your life, man, that's gotta hurt. And I
Yeah.
knew a couple of kids too, where it's like I didn't even know his name. I thought his name was Gordo. Like, Gordo, come here,
Yeah.
man. Like,
Yeah.
it is what
It's
it
very
is.
true, dude. It's very true. That's very true. I'll say this. My best friend, his nickname was Cow Tits. So
Wow.
terrible, right? It's a terrible name. But like that's what everyone called him. And what do you think that did to him?
Oh man, I bet he probably just felt destroyed, you know?
That's right. And so then you start believing, well, if everybody's telling me that, then I must be true. That's who I am. And so what you believe, you now reinforce it by the actions that you take.
Yeah.
And it ended up being so much that, you know, ended up taking him to his grave.
Which is awful, but that's why you're here and that's why you're doing what you
Thanks,
do.
man.
And honestly, Dave, man, like I'm just looking forward to our next conversation and
Let's do
looking
it,
to see
brother.
you do all kinds of good things, man. So before
Thanks,
you
man.
leave today, just give us some closing words and let us know where we can find you.
Your situation in your life doesn't define who you are. You have the ability of changing that when you choose to believe differently. Today, who do you want to be? Who do you desire to be? What life do you desire to have? Believe that, speak that, and it will come.
You make that up or is that original?
Yeah,
I'm stealing
yeah,
that. I
bet.
love that, man. I love that, David. But this kind of goes back to the power of the mind. You're 100% right, man. You're 100% right. There's no denying it. And for myself and for many other people that I've seen, man, everything that you said right there is 100% true. But it goes
Thanks,
back to
man.
the acceptance.
That's right, dude.
And I hope anybody
100%.
listening today, I hope you're ready to accept it. And if you're ready to work with David, be sure to check out the links I'm going to have in the description below. That being said, David, this was an awesome time, man. I can't wait to talk to you again.
Thank you, brother. It's an honor. Appreciate you having me and always here to support in any way. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. Until the next episode, guys.